Hello, and welcome to this year's first live stream showcase from IndieX 2020. For those who don't know, IndieX is an indie showcase that happens every year for the last four years. And this year, well, thanks to our current situation, we've had to move it to, an all digital edition, let's say. And so basically, we have the honor of today being with Ricardo Moura, as you can see right next to me. And he is the programmer and also designer for Outsider. And Outsider was a game that last year's edition was considered the best Portuguese game award. And so we are very, very happy to have him again with us today here. And basically, what we'll be doing today will be showcasing a bit of the gameplay. You are free to leave any questions you have for the dev in the chat. And afterwards, well, I'll be just asking some questions. We'll go to the gameplay, and we will have an informal chat and see what you think about the game. The point of all of these live streams are to showcase games that many times are not as known, of course, because they are indie, and particularly in the Portuguese market, as we know, which is a small market. So I hope we can have a very good conversation today. And to start up, well, I will just ask, how are you doing, Ricardo?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you for having me.
No problem. So for those who are not familiar with Outsider, could you give them like a very quick pitch of what your game is?
Sure. Outsider is a puzzle adventure game, apparently set after the apocalypse, but it's a game where every puzzle is different, and it's a game that explores themes that are familiar to those who like, for example, David Lynch, in which you see a narrative but there's another narrative under the surface that reflects what the players is seeing.
Very well. I particularly like the way you said like supposedly post-apocalyptical, because of course the player is free to interpret what you put on the screen for them. And well, I
Yeah.
think without further ado, we can start to move towards a little bit of the gameplay right now. I'll just check here. Well, so when did the development for the game start? How did you feel at the time? What motivated you to think about making the sort of game like puzzle game?
Um, at the time, what I thought was more interesting was I wanted to create a game that started with a very small scope, and as it progressed, the scope kept getting bigger and bigger. This is not what happened exactly in the final game, and a few months later, we thought it would also be interesting to make a game where every puzzle was different. Uh, in this game, we explore a mechanic, and after we're done with it, that mechanic doesn't come back again.
Mm, okay.
So every set of puzzles is completely different from the ones before.
So that was kind of one of your goals and also one of your, I guess, main design principles. Maybe it helped you keep the game fresh and present different challenges. And from the very little time I spent with the game, one of the things I enjoyed the most was that it's very intuitive. So like you don't explain things, you don't throw it in the player's face. You have this very clean interface, and there's this you force the player, not in a bad way, to right to think for
To
himself, right?
figure out the
Yeah, to
rules
figure out the rules of the
for
game.
itself. Yeah. Yeah. That was part of that was intentional. It's a thing where we spent a lot of time going to events and taking players' feedback, etc. Uh, the Room series was one of the biggest inspirations for the mechanical design of the game, and that's also a game where you pretty much have to figure out what you're supposed to do yourself, and you're pretty much thrown into the game.
Yeah, yeah. That was. I remember back at the time I was also judging the competition for
Mm.
IndieX, and that was the main reason why I fell in love a bit with the game, because it's not every day that you're presented with like a sort of puzzle design and mechanical design that isn't overly complicated, but it's still challenging. So you can't solve it just by looking at it, but yet it's extremely intuitive, and I found it to be similar to some puzzles in The Witness. I don't know if you know The Witness, which is also one of my favorite
Yeah,
games.
yeah.
And
I finished it. Yeah.
oh, you finished it. Oh, I didn't manage that feat. For me, that was a little bit above my, let's
Um,
say, my payroll.
I didn't. I didn't say that I didn't shit to finish it
Yeah.
because I kind of.
I for me it was
Uh,
way too much. I love the Witness, but there's so many puzzles, and so many of them are so hard. And the biggest problem, which I think your game doesn't suffer from, is that if you step away from the Witness, and then you try to go back, like 1 or 2 months later, when you're confronted with the puzzles you were doing at the time, you're not in the right, let's say, you've already forgotten the mechanics. You've
yeah,
It's not the same, and so sometimes it kind of feels like, I don't know, you can't solve it. You feel like a dumber than you actually are, just because like it's really, you have to be in a very specific mood. And what I enjoyed a lot about your game, not just mechanically, is that you can look at the puzzles, and most all of them you're given all of the information that you require to solve them in the place. Like, you don't need to go and think about the puzzle that you did a month ago or 2 months ago and go like, oh man, what was this? So I appreciate that, because it's sort of like valuing the player's time more, because it doesn't
mm,
force you to have to be constantly playing that game. It allows you to maybe even step back for a while if you're not feeling it, and then if you come back, you have all the information you need to continue the game and solve the puzzles. And so that's one thing I think your game has over The Witness. Um, but aside from mechanically, because that's what we've been discussing the most, is of course the mechanics of the game, because it's a puzzle game. I also
yeah.
enjoyed a lot like there's this sort of moody environment, right? And the music helps a lot in this regard, I feel. Um, I felt like there was this kind of solitude, but at the same time, it was kind of whimsical. You could like imagine that you were in a completely alien world, that you were, I don't know, that you were exploring, that you were finding stuff out, and there's some narrative there to be discovered, um, obviously, and I really enjoyed that aspect of her game. uh, Going back to The Witness, I played it, and I was kind of starting to see the narrative that was there, but it wasn't too clear, like just from the first few minutes. And I really enjoyed the environment that your game sets, and the expectations that you can expect for story for the game. I really enjoyed it. But during the development of this game, were there any like, I don't know, like some heartfelt moments for you, or a moment where something clicked in the development, or when you figured out some hard things you weren't getting through? If you could share any moments from the development that resonated more with you,
Uh,
I would very much appreciate
y-
it.
yeah. So I think the first moment that changed the game was initially pixel art, and a friend suggested we use vectorial art, which enables us to do the zooms. Like, for example, right now you're zoomed in on the eye of the android,
Exactly.
and you didn't lose any quality. There wasn't any transition, etc. That was important because it also enabled us to do a game where you only have a single camera from the start of the game to the end.
Yeah.
Uh, and it keeps the player immersed in the game. We also the story is a bit. I don't want to give any
Yeah.
spoilers, but the story is a bit more personal than it may seem. Once you get the full picture, um, how can I explain this? Yes, it's a very solitary story because it explores themes of death and
Mm.
dealing with the dealing with the nearing of death,
Yeah,
uh,
those teams
and
are.
uh, and what lies beyond, and
Oh,
what can lie beyond, and if anything, obviously.
okay, okay. Now that's always something that's really
Uh,
intriguing, and something that I think is very well used in a lot of games. Like, for example, I played Hyper Light Drifter. Do you know Hyper Light Drifter?
I never played it. I know the name.
Okay, so basically, the developer from that game discovered during the the development that he had an incurable heart disease, and so
Ouch.
it shaped the development of the game in a way that the character himself developed an illness similar to that as like an incurable disease, and it that affected the way the game worked, right? So I think it's very interesting the um, how the personal life of the devs can actually affect the games severely. And now I had to focus
Okay.
very slightly as I was talking and trying to do a musical puzzle at the same time, but it seems to have worked out. But yeah,
Yeah,
I really think that that personal message and that personal part is very important when you are making any
uh,
artistic endeavor. Uh,
yeah. Just to clarify, as far as I'm aware, I'm not dying,
oh yeah,
but
oh god.
I had some close deaths in the family, and this game is a bit wondering what goes through someone's
Mm,
mind in that situation.
okay, very very cool. So you said like the game grew in ambition, right? It was not supposed to be as big and as ambitious as it
Uh,
eventually came to be, right? Um, but was that of the devs team own volition, of your own desire, or did something help you or allowed you to give more time and resources to develop the game you wanted?
so to be fair, I think the game started with too much ambition because it's just me doing the programming and game design, and Tiago doing the graphics, the vector, not just the vector graphics, but every time we wanted to enter an event, you have to give. You know how this is. You have to give promotional images, and he had to
Oh
do
yeah,
all that stuff by himself too. And then there's Joe Pereira who did the music, and it was just the three of us.
yeah. I mean,
And for some reason, I
oh okay.
found it feasible for three people to do a game like this without a single mechanic, etc., etc. And yeah, it wasn't very clever, but it's what happened. We kind of finished it anyway.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, ambition is sometimes like births great things, right? Sometimes even if you think you can't do it, you can try to dream to do it, and sometimes it actually happens to become a very good game, in my opinion, of course. And you even go on to win awards and everything. I mean, I'm very glad you decided to continue on with your endeavors despite all of the hardships that I know that being an indie dev and being a small team, particularly also in Portugal, has. And I commend you for not giving up, let's say.
Thank you. Yeah. Uh, yeah, the process of developing the game was pretty much like the game itself. It was very lonely at times, and yeah, you doubt yourself most of the time. And yeah, I'm not saying sometimes it's fun and it's obviously rewarding, but yeah, the I think the most difficult part because it's been 4 years, was keeping ourselves motivated
Yeah, for sure.
and
Yeah,
keeping at it.
looking back on those, on the entire development time, if you had like one advice that you could give your past self, what would it be? What would you think you would tell your past self?
Not to make this game. Uh, no, but seriously, if we make another game together, I think first, how can I think the most important part is this. We didn't even do a market study.
Mm, okay.
Um, and sorry, just to interrupt, this puzzle has a bit of the interface could be a bit improved. You were going well, yeah. You can keep going there.
Okay, thank
No,
you.
you can do that. You can keep doing that. It's just the interface sometimes destroys the.
Mm, okay.
You were going well with the yellow one.
Thank you, thank you.
If you keep going up.
Okay, good. Don't worry. I might be able to do it. But yeah, for sure.
Sorry, but what I was saying, we didn't do any market studies. We didn't study the viability of the genre, and we didn't even try to make something like. I mean, the basic is opening an Excel file and seeing how much you think you're going to
To
earn
spend, yeah, to
with the
earn.
game, how many months of development or years in this case it's going to take you. I don't understand why it's not
Don't worry, I did it.
letting you.
It's
Oh,
probably
okay.
me being too finicky, but yeah. So
Uh,
for those who
yeah,
haven't noticed, we are repairing a robot which will eventually turn into our main protagonist. I think it's a very clever way to start the game, actually. Breathing life
uh,
into your own main protagonist. Did you have this idea early in the concept? Did it come later, or how do you think it arrived? This idea of like starting the game off by reviving or giving life to your character.
yeah. Actually, it was always the idea to start with a broken robot. Um, bef- So there was the initial prototype that I mentioned with pixel art, but then there was another prototype with programmer vector art.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what Tiago did was that, for example, when you went to a puzzle in the eye, it faded to black and then it switched perspective. So basically, he made it so the puzzles were solved in the Android itself, so you never lose immersion.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, the idea to start with repairing the own protagonist was there. Uh, it's kind of manipulative, so to say, but we're trying to make people attached to the main character. I mean, you spend so much time just repairing him. I mean, now you have to go all the way, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think I mean, I haven't gotten into the later stages of your game, but I think the choice for the vector graphs um, is a very good one because it makes it so you can scale everything, as you mentioned. So you can go to to the very smallest detail, right? Which you
Mhm.
obviously need if you're going to repair your own robot. But you
Yeah.
can also go to the like the grandest thing imaginable. I guess you can sort of make a game that is easily scalable. Let's say. So it's a
Uh,
very clever trick, and I've not seen many games do it actually. I also commend you for that choice.
yeah,
Do you know any more games
there.
that use
I
this vector
think.
style?
Uh, Let me check the name.
Okay, so this is oh
Lovers in a Dangerous Space Time use
ah
the
yeah.
vector style, but I don't think they used it much to change scale, so to say.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think it was more for the style itself.
So let's see. I need to light up these babies and also this. So you have this game is now available, right, for
Uh,
iOS
yeah,
and
I
Android, right?
yes.
Okay. Yeah, you have any future plans for other platforms or other kind of releases that you know about?
Yes. So currently we're adding content to the game, but in the future we will release it for PC,
Oh,
Xbox, and Switch.
okay, okay, very good, very good. So you're hoping to do that next year, right?
Yeah, hopefully in the beginning of next year.
Okay,
It depends how well this new development goes.
okay. I seem to have figured this out. Yes. Oh, okay. Now, so now I have to do this for every single one. Okay, okay, got it, got it, got it, got it. Yeah, sometimes
Uh,
this is what I love about puzzle games. Some things just look like they're so complicated, right, and abstract, and then they just click, and that moment is the moment that is so hard to achieve. So I don't know if you had any. Did you have any former experience working with puzzle games before this game?
yes, we did a game which is also on sale for mobile and PC called Fold Plus, which is a puzzle game, but it's a very abstract puzzle game which it also it always uses the same concept and keeps improving. It's a more traditional puzzle game, so to say.
Hmm. No, because that's what like myself. Like I'm not a designer, and but puzzle games always seem to me to be like something that is extremely hard to get just right in terms of like how you need because as I said before, like when you're making a puzzle, the puzzle can't be like immediately easy, right? But
Mm.
it can't be like mind-numbingly hard. You have to be able to give the player the right tools to solve the puzzle and to solve it in a manner that still stimulates him and challenges him, right? But something that does not frustrate him. And the moment of eureka is normally the moment that is most pleasing. So you also have to give him like some sort of audiovisual reward or something like that to when he completes a puzzle. So did you find this game to be like the most challenging puzzle game you've ever done in terms of mechanics or balancing, or was it?
Yes, it was by far the most challenging. It was the most challenging game that I ever did for many reasons. But yes, just to give an example, the first event that we went to, actually, I went alone to that event in London, and it was that was hard kind of itself because, for example, I went to the house of a friend on the West End just to get a monitor for the event, and then the event was completely on the East End. So I was in subway with a box monitor, and I dragged that all the way along with the suitcase with the computer. And at the time, I didn't even have a laptop that could run the game, so I also brought my desktop PC on a suitcase.
Oh damn.
Uh, anyway, the event went well, but by the time it was finished, I had, without exaggerating, at least 50 notes that I took just from the first puzzles of the game of stuff I had changed because, at least for me, it's nearly impossible to figure out how people are going to react when looking at a puzzle, and you get tunnel vision when you're developing something for so long. You just start seeing things. I mean, you know the solutions to the puzzles. You just see things differently from how other people see them. It's inevitable.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
for sure.
why that's why events were so important in the development of the game because we didn't have the budget to do Q&A. So events were also our way of testing the game. And it was also part of our design philosophy that we didn't want players. We wanted them to feel challenged but not frustrated. And in our view, the puzzles are there to serve the story, but the game is not about the puzzles. It's about the experience, and the puzzles shouldn't cramp the experience.
Okay. Very well, very well. Okay, looks like I finally got done. I'm almost done repairing the robot. But it's yeah, it's very I like the vector scale graphics. Obviously, like I think it's one of the most immersive puzzle games I've ever played because you're never out of the action. Let's say you're never in another place. You're never in a menu. You're never looking at. You're always constantly moving inside of the world, right? And particularly this initial then section of repairing the robot. I think that's particularly clear how, for in my opinion, it's been a huge success in terms of implementing something that guarantees the player will be immersed in the final product. Do you have any kind of like message or goal in mind when you were making this game, or did you just really wanted to try your hand at a different puzzle game? What was your initial motivation for looking at this new challenge?
Well, um, first, it was a game that I thought, oh, I would definitely play a game like this.
Yes.
Second, there was also a story that I wanted to tell. It started more as a sci-fi story, but then I realized it could be something more. Uh, those were the main motivations, and from the beginning, I knew where how the story was going to start and how it was going to end, and the rest was more fleshed out as we went along.
Okay. Did you have any part of the development which was more like which was extremely challenging for you and the team, or was there like a really big stucking point that you were not able to get across? Any big challenges
Uh,
or stories that you remember from the development of this game?
yes, the most complicated part was probably the last part. Uh, Tiago took 6 months to do the graphics for that part. A lot because of personal stuff, but also because it was the only part of the game, I think, where he didn't have a concept for it. I mean, he had to make the alien world mostly by himself. I mean, every concept. Because, like I said, there was a programmer art version of the first part, and also the game is more or less structured in 3 acts. And there was I made programmer art for the first two, so I think he was also stuck making all the decisions for the graphics for the last part.
Okay.
Of course, that didn't go very well because for me, you can imagine that 6 months was a lot of
Yeah,
time.
of waiting time, thinking
Yeah,
about what's going to happen.
I I improved several things in the game before that I wasn't even thinking of touching anymore. But yeah, it's complicated, but it is what it is. It's a small team,
Yeah, yeah.
and we didn't have any kind of funding in place for the game, so uh, yeah, the development of the game couldn't be a priority at all times. We had to eat and sleep,
Exactly, exactly.
etc.
And so in this year that we've had now, this strange new year that has happened with no events, with no, I mean, little socialization. People are mostly stuck at home. You know what you have to do. So what has been for you like the biggest changes and the biggest challenges that you think you've had to overcome in this year of 2020 when compared to other years?
To be honest, so I spent the game was released in 1 of July, and I spent most of the year until then developing the game. But I'm not a very social person, but even by my standards, the few social events that I had disappeared. So yeah, I guess that part is hard for everyone. So I guess it's harder for someone who's very social and draws energy from being with other people, and I like being with other people once in a while, but not that much, to be honest. So I guess it's harder for someone who does.
Hmm. But did the lack of physical events affect in any way the feedback that you might be getting? Have you thought about other means of attaining said feedback, such as
Yeah,
these kinds of virtual events, or trying to show players, like get a tight network of players to test the game and give you feedback? What kind of solutions have you come up with to these problems?
yeah, it was complicated. We had a publisher for the game, so at least they tested the game. And at least that brought some new people also looking at the game, which was okay. But even then, yes, I can say that the game, the last part of the game, we only showed it one day at last in the X, and we didn't show it on any other events. And if you read the reviews of the game even now, we already did some changes to it because it's considered, some people thought it was hard on purpose.
Hmm.
It's the harder part of the game, and it's not our intention at all, because what we wanted is that every new puzzle would reset the difficulty. But because that part wasn't shown to a lot of people, it's not our intention, but it's just more difficult because we just didn't know how people would react to it. And now we know. Some people quit the game in frustration in that part. Not not all people, but some. And we actually almost redid the first puzzle in the last part of the game because of player feedback. But this was after launch. It was not ideal. Like you said, we couldn't show the game at any event, and yeah, it's what you get.
Yeah. Now we're in a slightly different part. I mean, we've already
The
revived
beacon lost synchronization with the
our
main
lovely
satellite,
robot, and now we are finally being
accelerating
able
eternal time perception.
to find, let's say, ourselves in this weird world and in other puzzles. I think, but it was a good way to demonstrate, like when we exited the base, the place where we were, right? You could really expand and show off the environment in a very clear way. um, and I think it's this game, for all its simplicity for the small dev team, right? Um, the art style still manages to be like very, I don't know, like it's kind of personalized. It's kind of unique, individual. Like I don't remember seeing a game that looks like Outsider. Um, and I think it sets itself apart a bit because of that. Uh,
Uh,
so, so
something. Sorry
did
to
you
talk.
choose the artist that you wanted to work with for this project, or was he already a part of your team from the prior games? How did you deal with the art?
Uh, Tiago also did the graphics for another puzzle game that, to be honest, we could have invested more time in, called Suit Suit Go. So I knew him from before, and the interesting thing about working with Tiago and is that he didn't do illustrations for video games. He has classical training in illustration. He did stuff for some newspapers, but he is not used to at working with video games. And this has the positive side of, like you mentioned, the graphics not looking like most games, because that is not where Tiago gets his inspiration from. He's not a gamer. He he played Counter Strike years ago. That's mostly what he played. But the other side is, because he isn't used to doing graphics for games, there's a lot of stuff that he had to get used about, like the rotation points go here, the moving parts, how they fit together. Because when you do an illustration, you don't have
Yeah,
to worry about
you
any of
never have
that.
to think about
So,
all of those things. No. Well,
Yeah.
I think we've showed most of what the game can be right now. We're looking at a few more puzzles here, but I think we can for now just leave the game and check if we have any interesting questions from our audience. Let me just check here. Let's see. Let me check if we have any cool things in the chat. But meanwhile, I think we do. Let's check if we have something else. At this moment, I don't seem to have any interesting questions at the moment, but well, as you were mentioning, you had the artist who worked with, um, and also you had a musician. This musician was also part of your or earlier works. Did you know him from somewhere else? Was because the
uh,
music in this game is very 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 cool.
Thanks. I was actually lucky in that sense because I know him since he was born. He's my cousin, and uh, he he's from Braga, but he moved to London when he was like 17 or 19, something like that. And he actually worked. Sorry. He I don't think I actually don't think he would have worked in this game if he wasn't my cousin because, for example, he had a song featured in Grey's Anatomy. He worked it with an Eurovision winner, and I think this is more of a charity case in that sense.
I mean, it's still awesome, right? When you get the chance to work with someone that helps you elevate your project to a level you didn't know you could before, it's always great, independently of what may happen. You have Gonçalo Lopes asking a question. Do you know if the composer has a Bandcamp page or if he has any of his works available out there?
Uh, Not really. These days, mostly what he does is producing. So I know he has an Instagram which he uses mostly to promote his work. So I'll link that in the comments section.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, he also asked about availability and Switch port, please. I think you mentioned that the you were also thinking about it, right?
Yeah, yeah, we have to switch dev kit and we're going to work on it as soon as we're done. We're still adding stuff to the game. We're making certain aspects of the story clearer, and then we're going to work on the PC and console ports. But it's coming to Switch and Xbox One at least.
Okay, good, good. I see you've already linked the titles on there. So, do you think you can mention anything about these editions, or you're holding your cards to your chest for now?
Uh, no, what I'm going to say is these improvements that we're making, to be honest, it is they're probably the major complaint about the game, which honestly I don't think it detracts much from it, is that the game is too short.
Okay, okay.
And it's also why we're adding this, and it's also to clear up some stuff some people thought about the ending of the game, and uh, people thought we were imposing some kind of interpretation. So I guess now we are going to kind of impose an interpretation, but I don't think it's what people were thinking it is. Uh, Sorry, this didn't sound very clear. What I can also say is I think the Switch port is going to be great because the game is already thought about to be controlled with touch. I mean, we have the mobile version.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
And the PC version, I think, also works well with the mouse. We also have a very specific control system for Xbox One, but to be honest, we're doing the best we can. But I think most people will agree that adventure games aren't as well suited to consoles. I mean, for gamepads than mouse or touch
Yeah, yeah.
controls most of the
And
time.
of course, if you release for Xbox One, then it will be released of obviously Xbox One X, so and other kind of things. If you
Yes, I
could
hope so.
have like right now, imagine you finish what you are working on right now with Outsider, you publish it. and you had the chance to do like a dream project of yours, what do you think that would be? And I'm not referring to games, it's whatever you want in terms of like a dream project.
Our dream project when we started, so me and my cousin, was always to do a football simulator.
Nice.
But this became kind of a joke to us because it became more and more clear. I mean, there must be hundreds of people working on FIFA, for example. So it's kind of the ultimate pipe dream, even in game development, because you not only need a huge team, but you need licenses, you need a lot of stuff. So, and to be fair, it's something that nowadays I don't have as much of an interest on.
Okay. Has your interest changed right now to another kind of possible future project?
Uh, yes, I think games can progress in a very different direction. They already started to. For example, Amnesia is. I don't know if you played it, Amnesia: The Dark Descent.
Yeah. I didn't finish it because I'm a scaredy cat, but I played almost till I'd say 2/3 of the game.
Oh, okay. Well, to me, it's one of the best games of all time because I think it was very influential to a lot of people. And people like to talk about walking simulators, but if I'm not mistaken, this came out before that became a trend. And in a sense, it removed the possibility of the player fighting back,
Yeah.
and it it created new feelings in the player. And I think in the future you're going to see a much broader spectrum of games and a broader spectrum of emotions to being brought out on the players. And I would like to do that. I'm not sure if I can, but I see games a lot of time that are trying to push games in very different directions, and you have a much lower threshold to to develop a game nowadays, and it's
Hmm.
bringing more and more people to game development. And in a sense, we're in like the games are like in the 30s. In sense, if you think how
Yeah.
cinema was in the 30s, that's where games are.
Yeah.
So I think a lot is still coming, a lot is still going to change.
I enjoy that commentary you said that because we have a very famous, like probably the most famous Portuguese developer right now at the moment, which is Luis Antonio, which is working on 12 minutes with Annapurna Interactive, and he said exactly this, very close to what you said. He was saying, like games are a medium with a lot of potential because we are still like in the comparing ourselves to cinema, we're still in the black and white stage, as you said, in the 30s. We're still have a lot to
Yeah,
learn. We still have a lot to grow, and particularly in terms of what we can use interactivity for, to increase the emotional connection between the gameplay, the interaction that we are having with the game, and the message and the feelings that we want to give to the players, the experience. And I mean, I think that's a good message to keep in mind, particularly when you're thinking about the future of your projects, because I think that's a good way forward, let's say, to strive in that direction. We have also another comment by Gonçalo Lopes mentioning that his ultimate dream is to make Speedball 3. Why have people forgotten about dystopic futuristic sports? That's a good question, actually. I mean,
yeah,
I think there's still some games about dystopic future sports, but for real, there's been a certain falling out of that. I guess that was a trope of the 80s more, like all of that Mad Max and that Thunderdome and that all of those kinds of inspirations. I don't know. Would you like Ricardo to ever try to do
uh,
maybe not
i-
a football manager, but
i-
like a dystopic football manager?
if I can actually, not a football manager, but you were talking about the 80s, and I just remembered that Kyo, which is also from a
Mhm.
Portuguese studio, is under development, and it's a dystopic. future. It's cars with guns. It's obviously inspired in Mad Max.
Yeah.
So I guess not all people forgot
Exactly.
about it.
Exactly.
I think it. Yeah. But sorry to answer your question. Yeah, I think a future football game would be very interesting. Maybe you could add like realistic mutilation to it and saw blades in the middle of the pitch, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, those, kind of like there was a very gory version of American football and other kind of things. Like I think there was a fantastic game with orcs and something like that. I remember older games where, and yeah, it deployed that the gore and the mutilation was a big part of it. I mean, it's a big part of
Yeah.
most of those futuristic dystopic sports. But I mean, maybe it would be interesting to go in the other direction, like maybe make a future world where people are playing a sport and they, like we are so blocked from like or like so sensitive that we can't hurt others. It would be like violent sports, but you are using rubber gloves and using like those soft cushions and you can't do anything. That would be a nice perspective and a nice spin on another game. Like a game
Yeah,
where you can't hurt anyone. I think.
yes, sounds interesting. I wonder if people would keep at it.
Yeah, probably. I guess there will be something of that sort here. So, in regards to Indie X and other kinds of events, I think we've always mentioned this in past past occasions. But what would you, as a developer, look to improve or to see happen more with these kinds of events going forward? If we see that this situation is maintained, like in terms of not being able to physically attend events or having to be distant and other kinds of things, what would be your expectations for these kinds of big names to make some events to help devs reach out and establish contact with probably publishers or maybe even like testers team or something like that? What would you want like the people like us running the events to do to help you, if at all possible?
Uh, to be honest, I think. How can I say this? I don't think there's really a good substitute for being there
Yeah.
because, for example, myself, when I go to IndieX, I really like to test all the games. And if a game isn't, for example, for of a genre that I like, I can just skip it and go to the next one. And it's what anyone can do. Happens with all types of game. From a developer perspective, I think it's also kind of hard in virtual events because a lot of the publisher developer relation is, I think it's more personal than people realize because you have to trust each other. As a developer, you have to trust that the publisher will uphold this part of the deal, and the publisher expects that you will develop a published game on time. And it's much harder to read people when you're
Yeah.
doing this in virtual events than when you're dealing with when you're talking to someone face to face. You can get a different read, you can see if you're on the same page, etc.
Yeah,
I don't know if
I mostly
that
agree with
helps.
you. I think the sooner we can get back to physical events, obviously, with all of the safety considerations, with everything that is necessary, the better. Because uh, I mean, we just looking at last year's edition, like the environment that we had there, with all of the finalists, with the judges mingling with the finalists, everyone exchanging contacts, everyone talking about their games, showing their games. I mean, it's absolutely different from our this edition this year, right? Even though we are working very hard to try to make the best for everyone, we know that there's no substitute for a physical event where people can actually like connect and yeah, show the best side, show what they want to do, talk to the people directly, make connections, and make their let's say gaming dreams come true. Um,
Yeah.
as a part of the end of our stream, we are closing now to the end of our stream. Is there any message, anything you want to tell the viewers regarding whatever, like the future of Outsider, the future of Once a Bird, anything you want to leave the messengers with?
Um, sure. If you, I think the most important, if you want to support us, the game is available on Google Play and iOS. I will leave the link in the chat. Uh, we're also, like we said, we're working on a PC and console versions, and those are coming soon. And in the future, from Once a Bird, if we have a future, you can also you can expect games that will try to explore more the emotional side that games can bring. Hopefully, bring cinematic experiences and unusual gameplay, and that's what we'll try to do if we can.
I mean, if it's up to us, we'll be here to help you to see your games and to make sure that we can show it to as many people as possible, because Outsider is really an amazing game. I recommend everyone to go out and get it if you can.
Thank you.
It's not just mechanically well done, it's visually, it's very interesting. It's got an amazing soundtrack. And I mean, you've seen Ricardo to talk today during the entire presentation, and you see that he has a lot of love for what he does and a lot of heart. And I mean, it's a small dev team from a small country, so I think they deserve every last bit of support we can afford them. And I hope that's the message you leave today also from this small conversation. So well, I think for our first stream, this went actually very well. Thanks, of course, very to you, Ricardo. We couldn't have done it
Uh,
without you. I thank you for being here, of course.
and thank you for having me, and thank you for doing In the X every year.
No, no, no,
All the
no.
time you take with this.
Every time. I hope we can do it for many years to come, and be here with you and all the other Portuguese community and show off the best. Uh, for the viewers, tomorrow we're going to have another one of these streams with the second winner of the Best Portuguese Game Award for IndieX 2019, and it's DK of Logos from Amplify Creations. And I hope you also come and watch tomorrow, and stay tuned because we are going to have an entire month of streams. Maybe you can go check the schedule right now at www.indiex.pt, and we have lots of good things to show you, lots of good games, and so I hope you can join us and participate, because we just want to reach out to everyone, to as many people as possible, and show them that there's a lot of good indie games out there and a lot of fun to be had. Once again, I thank you, Ricardo, for giving us your time and giving us this amazing game, and also the team. And well, guys, we'll see you.